Hello, David at DCES UK, and a little impromptu videoette for this Sunday morning. Oh, blimey, that double vision's only just clearing. Clock's changed today. Can we do away with the old clock changing? I've got a million clocks in this place, and it's such a pain to change them all. In this day and age, clocks should change themselves. Oh, that's magic, though. There's a cup of tea better than an English breakfast. I haven't found it yet. Anyway, the point of this video. We're all familiar with my Ultimate Electrician's Toolbox, and the fact that my TIS MFT Pro just, oh, doesn't that just fit beautifully into that space like it was made for it, and jolly handy it is too to have the functionality of this baby in your general toolbox, quite besides the fact that I carry, well, a Fluke branded box with me, but it has the metal tester in it at the moment, one of the two metal ones that I'm messing about with. That being the other one. They're both in calibration, of course. This is also in calibration. I think I might have a fault on this thing, though. Let's see if it'll play ball today. We were on a job on Friday where the continuity function just wouldn't work. What have I done with these leads? And this has happened before. It just would not work. And then I got home later and tried it, and it was working fine. And we were out on another job on Friday where exactly the same symptoms happened again. So I don't know if I've dropped it down the stairs one time too many and it needs a bit of TLC, a bit of a service. But it is a bit of a concern if I'm out on site and it's not going to give me a continuity reading. Working fine at the moment, of course. Yep, nothing wrong with that. So I don't know. I don't know whether I've shaken something loose inside there or whether I've got a problem with my test leads. It may just be down to the test lead. You'd hope not, because these are quite new, these test leads. I replaced them all at the end of last year. So I'd be rather smo if I found my leads were duff. Anyway, it got me thinking. I did that video on Old Geezer's Gear recently where we looked at the Bobbin testers. There is a lot of love for the Bobbin instruments out there. A lot of people who still use these kind of things. Obviously these are older versions, these date back to the late 90s. Last calibration in 2007 for this particular model. But some people have been asking, Sean Dempsey for example was one who asked on the video I posted yesterday about trying these out to see whether they were still giving accurate numbers. And I was also thinking, well, you know what, maybe while I investigate what's going on with this thing, work out whether it's the leads or a problem with the tester, I wonder if these still give out some accurate numbers, maybe I could just chuck one of them in there for now. In fact, yeah, I reckon I can fit two testers in there. Oh, again, made for the job. These Stanley boxes, oh, marvellous, marvellous. So, you know, I wouldn't be averse to bunging a couple of Bobbins in and having a bit of play with them for a while. Obviously they're not calibrated, but then it doesn't matter because the stuff in this box can just be used for your general fault finding. I don't need to necessarily know what the numbers are. If I'm doing initial verification or test and inspection, obviously I've got my calibrated instrument for getting the numbers for the paperwork. But if I'm doing a bit of fault finding and I'm just after whether there is or isn't continuity, what the insulation resistance is, what the loop impedance is, that sort of stuff, it doesn't really matter if they're calibrated or not, so long as they work, and that's what we're going to play with today. I've got 3 Bobbin testers that Boyd at Certon had passed on to Nick, who passed them on to me. This is this one's actually in the best nick. This is the RCD tester, and this is probably one that I wouldn't bother carrying around with me because obviously this is set up for Type A RCDs. It wouldn't have a clue about, Type AC RCDs wouldn't have a clue about Type A. So I would want to do my RCD testing still on the Metrol or whichever MFT, calibrated MFT I've got. But, you know, like I say, insulation, continuity and loop impedance testers, I'm going to have a little play with them, haven't I? You know me, I do like my testers. I was looking at another one, a Uni-T model. I can't find it in this country. I think they're quite big over in China, Uni-T, but they've got an instrument that, I don't know, I've just got a bit of a chubby on for its form factor. It looks like the kind of thing that would also fit rather well into the case there. So I may have to see if I can get hold of such a thing. Has anybody got any experience of Unity, or do you know anywhere in the UK that resells them, or are they sold in the UK under a rebadge name? Because that instrument does look like it'd be quite tasty to get hold of. Anyway, in the meantime, I think what we'll do is we'll have a play with these and just see whether they pump out the same sort of numbers as our calibrated metal does, and we'll do that using the mega checkbox here. This is going to be a very boring video, so I apologise for that. It's Sunday though, you know, what else are you going to do on a Sunday now that the sun's buggered off? So we're going to use the Mega MTB 7671/2, or is that 767.5? And we'll just get an indication of whether these robins still put out the kind of numbers we expect them to put out. And if they do, and they, you know, the functionality is okay, I might just stick these two in the box for the next week and just sort of just see how I get on with them in my my usual duties of prattling about and fault finding and stuff. At least until I don't want to lose the full functionality that this baby gives me. I mean, obviously this does all the stuff, excuse me, I need it to do. You've got phase rotation on there. You've got type A or AC or whatever RCD testing. You've got continuity insulation. You've even got earth leakage if you use the clamp accessory, which is hiding up here under my microphone. So yes, there's a lot of functionality in this nice little form factor, this nice little package. But I just need to figure out whether I've got a lead problem or whether it needs to go back to TIS for a bit of TLC, because she does see some rough service, just like the wife. Anyway, so I get the camera set up here on a tripod so it's pointing down at the checkbox thing, and we'll have a play with that. One other thing to mention, I am indebted to Dave down in Portland. I bumped into Dave in a pub down in Portland where the missus and I were trying to get a table for an evening meal. Unsuccessfully, I might add. This was last summer and it was rather busy. And we had a nice chat with Dave, who sort of collared me, said, "Oh, you're that prat off YouTube." Oh, yes, yes. And he has sent me this rather marvellous Cyclim test lamp, which he says he last used in the late 60s. Now they still make these. You can still buy these. I was actually tempted to get one, so it's worked out rather well that he sent me this, because this is a rather marvellous instrument. What does that say? My eyesight is just turning to shit. Safe testing requires the tester is checked for glow on a known live source or proving unit before and after use. Yes, indeed. 150 to 500 volt AC or DC. We've got inside here two lamps, a neon and a filament lamp. And if I just put it on a live source here, oh, look at that. That's about as basic as it comes, really, isn't it? I don't know why they use the two lamps. It's a bit strange. I think the neon will come on in the event of the filament lamp failing, so it still gives you an indication. But in that case, I don't know why they just don't have a neon in there. Let me know in the comments. Someone will know about these. But this is just a lovely thing, isn't it? So it's live. So you can see, if you look carefully, the neon will just quickly flash before the filament lamp comes on. So I guess while the filament lamp resistance, when it's cold, is enough for it to click over to the neon or something. If we extract the lamp, it's a rather interesting item in of its own right. Yeah, what do you think about that? And again, you can still get the replacement parts for it. So this is obviously something that has been around for donkey's years, and quite surprisingly is still available today. Just to give you a very rough and ready sort of indication as to something being live. I mean, if the minimum range is 150 volts, you know, you'd have to wonder what happens, what it shows if you stick it on something that's still got a shock potential, but perhaps doesn't meet the minimum range of this thing. Obviously, these days, the more modern, what have I dumped it? I think it was up there earlier, but I took it down to put the TIS up. so that wasn't very forward thinking of me. But, oh, where have I stuck it? Aha, here it is. This is the most, otherwise the most basic voltage indicator that I've got, and that uses, it's got 6 LEDs on there. These will give you the sort of the phase rotation or the polarity for testing DC. 50, 100, 200 and 400 volt indicators. If I can get that on there, I don't know how well the camera picks that up, but there you go. That is otherwise the most basic indicator I've got. And I don't think I'd want to use in real life anything more basic than that, but nonetheless, this is a wonderful thing, a very interesting thing. Let's see if it trips an RCD. I bet it does. Normally a voltage indicator, if we do that to earth there, won't trouble an RCD because the LEDs take so little current. But I bet this filament lamp will give it a headache. Yeah. So there you have it. But yes, thank you to Dave down in Portland. Lovely part of the world, by the way. That is a magnificent thing. Right, I'm going to get the camera set up on a tripod now, set this test box up. We'll just have a quick comparison of what test numbers come out compared to the 21st century calibrated metrical instrument that I have here. Hold on to the seat of your pants, folks. Okay, let's see if I can do this without cocking anything up. I'm going to switch on the camera here. All very high-tech and impressive, I'm sure you'll agree. I've got here the Metrol MI3152. This is in calibration. This is a relatively new tester. Still unknown from Metrol, don't tell them I've still got it. I'm just going to, before I do anything else, let's see what voltage we're getting out of this thing. 241 volts, fine. Okay, now the first instrument we're going to be testing is the Bobbin KMP3050, which does continuity and insulation resistance. So I'm going to run through the continuity and insulation resistance tests that the Mega checkbox puts out, and we'll just compare the numbers we see on here to the numbers we eventually see on the Bobbin and see if we get the same sort of thing. So starting with continuity, 5 ohm scale. And 5 ohm isn't duly delivered. 0.5 ohms, 0.52, that's good enough for me. I'm going to switch to insulation resistance now at 250 volts. Let's set this up for 250 volts. And this should return a figure of 0.25 if I remember rightly at 250 volts. Both the lights are lit. 262 volts, 0.25, ignore the cross. This is the figure that we're expecting the checkbox to deliver. If we switch it down to 500, then our figure should be, oh, I'm in the wrong thing. Our figure should be 0.5 on the screen. Sure enough. And if I switch it to 1000, our figure should be 1 mega ohm on the screen. I keep pressing the wrong buttons on this. Lovely stuff. So that's doing what we expect it to be doing. If I switch it to 9 mega ohm, I'm going to put this back down to 500. It doesn't really matter what this is set to. Whatever I set it to, we should get a figure of 9 mega ohm out of the checkbox. 1.08, good enough. And 90 mega ohm should deliver a result of 90 mega ohm on the screen, 90.2. Excellent. So the checkbox is delivering the numbers we expected to see on a modern calibrated instrument. So let's replace that with a not so modern and nowhere near calibrated instrument and see if we get the same sort of results. I'm using the green and black test leads that I use with my TIS tester, and again I'll wrap them around the tripod somehow. There is a risk that there may be a problem with these leads, which is why I'm having trouble with the TIS. So this will help to tell me whether there's a problem with the leads or not. Obviously only 2 leads to connect, there's no neutral, no blue lead to connect on this thing. And if we connect them together and go into the ohm setting, looks like we need to null it. I presume I'm doing this correctly because I've not used one of these instruments before, but I think, how hard can it be? Yeah, okay. Getting a nice 0 on the screen, I hope you can see that all right. We got 241 volts out of the thing before. Oh, that makes a very horrible noise if you plug it into an AC source when it's set to do a dead test, which is all this instrument is supposed to do. But it shows the voltage, makes a rather pleasing bleeping sound, and a rather unpleasing shrieking sound accompanying that. But it gives us a voltage indication, which is nice. So let's plug it into the dead side of the checkbox. We're on the ohms scale. 20 ohms is our full scale deflection here, 5 ohms on here, so well, we should see hopefully somewhere around 5 ohms, 4.95. I think the metal gave us a 5 on the nose, didn't it? But you know, running 0.05 out there, that's good enough for me. 0.5 ohms, 0.47. I think the metal gave us 0.52. So you know, for basic fault finding stuff, that would be okay. You wouldn't have to worry about that kind of inaccuracy. Obviously, if I turn up the scale, I haven't got anything. Let's turn that back to 5 ohms. I haven't got anything that I can deliver out of the checkbox. I can go and stick a resistor on this to check the 200 and 2000 ohm ranges a little better, but I can't see that I'm going to need them, to be honest. It's always going to be the 20 ohm range. The only time I'm going to need a higher resistance range would be if I were testing something like an underfloor heating element or something like that, or a heating element, something where I need something higher than a 20 ohm scale. But for most of the testing that this would be exposed to would be things like your R1, R2, basic continuity, when you're trying to fault find on why a ring's broken or something like that. So that seems to work perfectly fine. On the continuity setting, let's switch to IR now. 250 volts, 250 volts. Insulation, I've got 3 scales here, 20 mega ohm, 200 mega ohm, 2000 mega ohm. Well, let's just try each one and see what happens. So 20 mega ohm, we get the 0.24 that we expect. Let's, I do like the analog scale as well, like you get on the mega instruments. Analog-esque scale. Yeah, so the 20 mega ohm gives you a better granularity of result, doesn't it? But it's the number we expect. Switch to 500. So it's easier to do it via a dial than the touchscreen menus. I kept getting lost in the menus on the Metro. And that's one problem with touchscreens, isn't it? Is you do kind of, you can lose track of where you are a little bit. Whereas a dial, you just click and forget. But yeah, we expected 0.5, we've got 0.48, and we should expect 1. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong scale there, aren't I? That gives us 1. 0.97. And this should give us 9 mega ohm, so I'll leave that on the 20 meg scale there. Yeah, 8.91. Near as damn it. 90 mega ohms, I'm going to have to turn up the scale. 88.9, 89. Beautiful. So this instrument is perfectly sound, perfectly capable, and could go into the ultimate electrician's toolbox in lieu of the MFT Pro until I've had time to figure out if I've got a problem with the Pro. But the leads seem to be okay, or at least these 2 leads seem to be okay at the moment. So that's the KMP 3050. Next we shall play with the loop tester, because that's the other one that I will potentially be putting in the box. And annoyingly, I've lost the lead. I bought a lead for this a few months ago, and it's in this mess of an office somewhere. So I'm going to clock off for a few minutes while I desperately try and find where the lead's gone. Okie dokie, loop testing. I found my lead. and I can't actually use it for this. It was cunningly concealed in the drawer where I keep the spare leads. So, you know, there is method in the madness in this place. It looks like a bomb's gone off in it, but I know where things ought to be. But I can't use it on here because the checkbox, let me press record on this camera so you can see this. The checkbox requires a standard plug top, and this has to be closed in order for the outlet to go live. So although I could plug this into, say, an R2 unit to plug it into there, which is what I would use out on site, I can't today because I wouldn't be able to physically close the lid on there. So I have to use just an IC lead, but it's fine. I'm talking rubbish. You don't need to know any of that. You don't care. Let's get some numbers out of the metrol, and then we'll see what the Bobbin says. So I'm going to go into loop testing. I'm not going to set it for RCD testing because although this is on an RCD, the checkbox compensates for it. So I can just do it as a 2-wire test. So I'm on loop. We're not at the source of the installation, so this is effectively a ZS, not a ZE. It's not external to the installation as such. We're downstream on my test rig nonsense here, so a higher number than you would perhaps expect ordinarily on a TN installation, 0.57. But that's fine, as long as we know what number this calibrated instrument is giving us, that's okay. Loop plus 10. Well, you can probably guess where this is going to go. 10.7, so yeah, it's kind of plus 10, isn't it? Loop plus 180 should give us something around the 180 mark. I hope this is showing up all right on that camera. 181, marvellous. I'm not going to do the PFC test because it's given us the PFC number already, which, if we go back to loop, because this tester will display both at the same time, it does the impedance and the fault current. 406 amps at your standard loop setting of reading of 0.57 ohms. So if we try to remember those numbers, and they're already leaking out of my head. In fact, I'll leave that instrument on so that it remains on the display. That's very clever of me. I actually have 2 of these Bobbin 4120s. This is my own one that I've had for 20 odd years, which hasn't seen any action for a long, long time. The calibration sticker, I don't know what year it was, but it begins with a 9, so goes to show how long that is. And then I've got the other one that Boyd provided me. So we're playing with my one here, but I'm sure Boyd's will hopefully give out the same sort of numbers. I was saying about you've got to close this lid. You can see here that until I close that, we don't get the 2 neons on to indicate that the polarity and everything is good. We get a voltage reading. We had 241 on the other instruments, so we're getting 239 at the moment, 238. Had a couple of brownouts last night, which went and knocked all my fucking clocks out. So I've had to change too many clocks today. So I don't know what that was all about. Very rare that we get power interruptions here, but yes, it was just enough to spoil our televisual entertainment last evening. Set that to the lowest scale, 20 ohms. We got 0.57 on the metrol. And we're not too far off, are we? 0.46. It's a little bit out, I suppose. But again, I wouldn't be using this for initial verification or for any kind of reporting or certification. This would just be if I were on site and I needed to get some basic data as to where the installation is whilst fault finding or whatever. And, you know, that's a good enough indication. Let's put it on to loop plus 10. Should be able to keep that same scale. Oh, sorry, I interrupted it there. Yep, so we're just below 10. Excuse me, loop plus 180. Oh, it says it's off scale on the 200 range. Let's switch it to the 2000 range. 184, which is where we expect it to be. I wonder why it said off scale if the scale deflection is 200 on that setting. Anyway, good enough. It doesn't auto range, of course, so if you got that kind of error where it says wrong scale mate, you've just got to apply a bit of logic to it and think, okay, well, it's telling me to switch up, let's switch up. Whereas a modern instrument would just auto range that. The new Q-Tech versions of this thing, they look lovely. I do like them. can't really justify spending 400 odd quid on something that would just do loop and PFC testing though. And anyway, besides the multifunction loveliness I've got two of these things, so definitely can't justify spending any dollars on that. Let's switch this one to the fault current, and we'll just put it on the 200 amp range because we're expecting that fault current to be around 400 volts. Sorry, 400 amps. Oh, 21.7, that's interesting. Why would that be? You know, I don't know. I can't account for that. And I'm too hungover to really think about it. 21.7. What does the metrol say specifically for fault current? Oh, 21.5. 10.7 ohms. That's interesting. I thought the fault current that this setting would deliver would be the fault current that you'd get from the loop setting. But it's not. Okay, it seems to be more at the loop plus 10 setting, which is curious, but that's obviously a characteristic of the checkbox that I've missed, because I don't often use the PFC setting simply because, again, I'm usually checking these sort of instruments where it's just delivering both results. So there's no need for me to go specifically onto PFC separately, but it seems the PFC setting on here is the same value you'd get at loop plus 10, so it's 21.5, so that was actually giving me the right number then, wasn't it? 22.8. Wunderbar. So it would seem that those two instruments are working perfectly fine. Now, I said I wouldn't use the RCD tester, and that's because it probably doesn't do type A testing. But for said shits and giggles, we ought to try it out, ought we not? See how it compares to the metrol. So let's go into RCD on the metrol, auto tests. We've got 100 milliamps, 30 milliamps, 10 milliamps. There's probably no point us playing with the 10 and 100 milliamp ranges, because again, we just want an indication as to whether it's working correctly, and these things all look the same. I don't know where I've put it. Is that it? Let's have a look at what it's got on here. I don't know. I just feel this video is going on a bit too long, but maybe I'll do it. Maybe. Anyway, go. So our 1 times testing gives us a high of 47.7 on the 180 side of the waveform. Our 5 times gives us a high of 18.4 again on the 180 side. Half times should just pass at whatever the scale deflection is, over 1999 milliseconds, and it passes again. And this is just going to do a ramp test because that's what it does. 22.5. I'm just going to do a ramp test again on the 180 side of the waveform, which I'm sure won't be much different. 22.5. Marvellous darling. Let's see if the Bobbin box of Trickettes gives us similar numbers. Let's attempt to not make a complete balls up of this. We're on the 30 milliamp scale. Does this need batteries? Shouldn't do, should it? Just wonder why nothing's coming on. Oh, because there's no power. That would help, wouldn't it, David? Got to press the reset button. Okay, 30 milliamps, polarity is correct, we are clear to proceed. No such joy of auto testing here. It's all very much manual, baby. Half times should give us no trouble, and indeed it doesn't give us a time, it just says we're off the scale. Fine, that's what we want. 1 times at 0 degrees, the metric gave us 37.8. 38. That was nice and quick as well, wasn't it? 180 degrees, the metric gave us 47.7. 48. I tell you what, that's beautiful, isn't it? 5 times, we had, what's that say, 8.2. 8. Obviously the granularity of scale is such here that we don't get point anything, but that's fine, that's okay. 180 degrees, 18 milliseconds. We had 18.4 on the Metral. So again, a lovely instrument and in top condition there, and okay, it doesn't have the whistles and bells of auto ranging. You've got to know what you're setting it as, but a mighty fine thing. I'm going to flick this up to 100. 100 at 1 times, 37 milliseconds. 100 at 5 times, 8 milliseconds. I'm sure we'll get the same numbers out of the Metral if we tried. They're pretty much the same numbers that we just got on the 30 milliamp scale, aren't they? So yes, that appears to be working perfectly well. I wouldn't carry it around with me because if I'm using the Robbins more for fault finding and not for initial verification or anything, then RCD testing is probably not a requirement that I really need to be carrying something of that bulk in the toolbox for. Lovely though it is, I've got that functionality built into the MFT, and the MFT is always on site. So, you know, it's for fault finding purposes. I don't really need to be knowing about RCD trip times until such time as I found the fault and I want to make sure everything's okay, potentially. Obviously, if I think I've got a dicky RCD, then yes, an RCD tester is going to be very useful to have, but I can fit 2 of those in my Ultimate Electrician's Toolbox, which gives me enough of the functionality I need for breaking into the toolbox for my day-to-day shenanigans. So I think that's probably all I need. Have I got anything else to talk about? I don't think I have. So I'll let you all go now. You'll be pleased to hear. Let's turn that off. But interesting to see it all working so well as well. I might, as I say, put these to some use over the coming week. I think I'll get rid of the straps because they're just in the way, as well as the bag there. Might even just take the tape off that's holding this lid on. Yeah, I've done it. Peeled it off and it hasn't even left a sticky residue. So, you know, that forms a nice compact instrument which, when paired with the loop tester, will perhaps tick enough boxes until I've sussed out what's going on wrong with my MFT, my TIS MFT. But yes, very interested in the Uni-T, and also any other odd models. Do comment on odd models of MFT that you think that I ought to be looking at. I'm probably spending money on that I shouldn't be spending, because there are various weird and wonderful ones in the world. I see that someone mentioned in the comments in a recent video about what they use in Australia, which seems to be an analog device, like the analog version of the Q-Tech continuity and IR tester, which looks like a fine instrument. Very interesting. Not on these shores. If you know of things that perhaps aren't on these shores that may be worth another look, or maybe worth a closer look, if we can source one, then do let me know. Otherwise, my watch says it's 12:22, my body clock says it's 11:22, but either way, it's time to crack one open and get the Sunday underway. So thanks for tuning in for what is perhaps a dreadfully boring video. Time once again to say cheers for the beers, and today's shout outs go to, well, who else but of course Donovan's Alarms, one of our favourites there. Is there a better alarm company, especially in the Canvey Island, Essex area? I doubt it. I doubt it. If you're in that neck of the woods, Donovan's Alarms is the place to be going to. Ooh, founded in 1990. That's when I left school. Thank you, Donovan's Alarms. We also have GR Electrical RH17, of course, another common name, who suggests that perhaps Nudge can get a sidecar for his motorcycle, which, you know, may actually end up being the case, because I'm not sure how much longer I can afford to keep running the bloody transit with these fuel prices. £1.70 a litre still. Chuck Kirchner over in Maine, USA, good old Chucky, who has bought a tea for Nige, and he says I can have a beer but not pish. I'm afraid I am very much on the pish. I've got the Carlsberg on the go somewhere. I don't know where I put my can, but it is a school night and I can't overdo it. But thank you, Chucky. A new name, at least on this platform, a new virgin for us, David Patterson. A greeting from an old retired spark in Northern Ireland, who suggests a Guinness for oneself. And you know what? I used to drink a lot of Guinness. I really liked my Guinness. And then I went to Ireland in 2019 to County Sligo, where I behaved like the typical chavvy Brit abroad and drank too much of the stuff. And now I just can't face it. I haven't been able to face it since. I should get back on it, because I did used to enjoy my Guinness. I recall, David, you were asking in a previous video about how Nige managed to slim down his massive arse, and that got answered in yesterday's video, of course. Basically, he doesn't eat so much. There you go. So, question answered. Thank you, David. Tom Robinson, another one on the Virgin list. Thank you, Tom. I see you also put that on Twitter. Sparky Tom Electrical on Twitter has bought me a beer, and I shall drink that any moment now. And finally, for today, at least for the point where we're signing off, we've got none other than celebrity Jimbo the Electrician, he of Thomas Nagy fame, who has now, of course, gone back to South Wales and started up his own channel. If you've not been over and had a look at Jimbo the Electrician channel, I'll stick a link in the description. You can take a peek down there now. I hope it's all working out for you, Jimbo. And thank you very much, young man, for buying an old fool like me a pintette of fizzy stuff. But I think that's all I've got to say, so I shall let you get on with your Sunday, and I shall go and finish off what's left of mine. Chin chin and ciao for now.